KCAAradio.com.
KCAA.
Do you believe in a God that satisfies? Do you believe in a God that opens eyes? Do you believe in a God that tells you lies? Or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that brings you down? Do you believe in a God that wears the ground? Do you believe in a God that makes you bow? Or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that satisfies? Do you believe in a God that opens eyes? Do you believe in a God that tells you lies? Or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that brings you down? Do you believe in a God that wears the ground? Do you believe in a God that makes you bow? Or do you believe in me?
It's beyond common sense. It's Lanny Sense with Lanny Swerdlow, KCAA's resident gay, woke, liberal, pot-smoking, race-mixing, tree-hugging, left-handed, science-affirming, Jewish, humanist, atheist, a white evangelical Christian nationalist, worst nightmare.
And welcome to our show today. Yes, it's the worst nightmare of those people who don't like me, which is generally white evangelical Christian nationalist men, especially. And we got a great show for you tonight, and it's going to be great, especially if you have something you want to talk about. So please call in tonight. If you got some questions you'd like answered, if you got some opinions you'd like to state, whatever it is, give us a call. We will have a great time this hour talking about them. The number to call is 888-909-1050, 888-909-1050. This is your chance to corner me if you can. You know, I have a very interesting Facebook page. If you're not, you can friend me on Facebook. I just type my name in there, I guess, in the search bar and come up with Lanny Swerdlow, and you can friend. We have some great, wonderful discussions. I'm on an atheist versus theist web chat, whatever you call it, group. I'm also on Neil deGrasse Tyson's chat group, or whatever he calls a group thing. It's fascinating information getting there. And you've got all these religious people and science people, and there's some wonderful cartoons that I think anybody would enjoy, no matter what your opinion is on the subject, although some people might be offended. Sorry about that. Of course, some people get offended at lots of stuff. But anyway, welcome to tonight's show, and please give us a call if you have anything you would like to talk about. But first, I've got something I want to talk about, and that is, the presidential race has been totally upended. Biden, because of his horrible performance at that debate with Trump, was finally convinced that his legacy would be destroyed if Trump got elected. Everything that Biden has done would be overturned. And if he didn't get elected, which was a good chance, no one would be talking about all the fantastic things he did with the Inflation Reduction Act and the Build Back Better and so forth and so on. All they'll be talking about is how he destroyed the Democratic Party and the freedom and democracy in America by not recognizing that he couldn't beat Trump. But he did, and he didn't want to see his legacy dragged through the dirt. So we now have Kamala Harris, his vice president, running. And the question, of course, is, especially for a show like this, is what is Kamala Harris's? Now it's Kamala Harris. It's not Kamala, it's Kamala. It's comma, the word comma followed by law. Kamala Harris. What is her position on cannabis? I mean, she comes from California, where we've legalized it and stuff. So I'd like to go over with you an article that was written by, published in Reason Magazine. Now, if you don't know about Reason Magazine, they are a libertarian-leaning publication. They're not part of the Libertarian Party, but at least I don't believe they are, but they are very libertarian in their outlook, which makes them kind of a social democrat and a free enterprise Republican, but you wouldn't know it from today's Republican Party, that's for sure. But they came up with a very interesting article entitled, "Unlike Biden and Trump, Kamala Harris has repeatedly supported pot legalization." Last May, they point out the Department of Justice proposed a rule that would move marijuana from Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substance Act, which is the most restrictive category, we've talked about that, to Schedule 3, which includes prescription drugs such as Tylenol with codeine, ketamine, and anabolic steroids, which none of the Olympic athletes take, correct? Right. The public comment period has expired quite a while ago. And according to an analysis by the Drug Policy Alliance, which is probably the foremost drug policy reform organization in the United States, and which, by the way, I am a member, and you should be a member too. Just go to DuckDuckGo. I never tell people go to Google because they trace you and they sell your information. Go to DuckDuckGo. They don't trace you. They don't sell your information. And type in Drug Policy Alliance, and their website will come up, and you can learn all about them. Anyway, according to the Drug Policy Alliance, most of the comments thought the DOJ proposal was too timid. Nearly 70% of the 30,000 or so comments favored descheduling, decriminalizing, or legalizing marijuana at the federal level. Now, that breakdown jibes with the survey results that indicate 70% of Americans support cannabis legalization. And judging from the positions that she took as a California senator and a 2020 presidential candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris is one of those Americans. She falls into that 70%. Although she was a latecomer to the cause, Harris, unlike Biden, who she is replacing as the Democratic pallbearer for 2024, pallbearer, not pallbearer, pallbearer. Boy, talk about a Freudian slip. The Democratic presidential nominee has repeatedly urged the repeal of pot prohibition. USA Today noted in an article, quote, Harris has been criticized for aggressively prosecuting weed-related crimes when she was California's Attorney General and San Francisco's District Attorney, particularly given the racial disparities in punishment nationwide. End quote. She opposed a California legalization initiative in 2010, which I supported, when she was the San Francisco District Attorney. She laughed at a question about legalization in 2014 when she was running for Attorney General against a Republican who actually favored the initiative and declined as California's Attorney General to take a position on the 2016 initiative, Proposition 64, that finally legalized recreational use in California. She did not embrace legalization until 2018, around the same time that John Boehner, the former Republican Speaker of the House, became a paid cannabis industry lobbyist. Quote, we need to decriminalize marijuana nationwide, not bring back the worst days of the war on drugs, end quote, Harris wrote in a January 2018 Medium essay, rebuking then Attorney General Jeff Sessions for rescheduling a DOJ memo that urged federal prosecutors to leave licensed cannabis suppliers alone as long as they were complying with state law. Later that year, Harris co-sponsored the Marijuana Justice Act, which has been introduced by Senator Cory Booker, Democrat, New Jersey, who would have been a wonderful vice presidential candidate with Kamala Harris, except I don't know if the American public is ready for both a black president and a black vice president. I'm ready. That bill that Booker sponsored would have removed marijuana from Schedule 1 and eliminated federal criminal penalties for people who grow, distribute, or possess it. The bill would also have ordered the expungement of convictions for marijuana use or possession. In 2019, Harris was the Senate sponsor of the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, the MORE Act, which likewise would have repealed the federal ban. It also would have created an automatic process for the expungement, destruction, or sealing of criminal records for cannabis offenses, a broader category than the convictions covered by the earlier bill. Times have changed, Harris said. We need to start regulating marijuana and expunge marijuana convictions from the records of millions of Americans so they can get on with their lives. During her brief and unimpressive bid for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, Harris promised that she would, quote, take action to legalize marijuana, further reform federal sentencing laws, end private prisons and the profiting off of people in prison, and push states to prioritize treatment and rehabilitation for drug offenses, end quote. She also said she would seek to expunge records for marijuana offenses. After she became President Joe Biden's running mate, however, she became wedded to the marijuana reform agenda that was noticeably less ambitious. Unlike Harris and the other Democratic contenders in 2020, Biden resisted legalization, saying that he was waiting for research that would definitely resolve the question of whether marijuana is a gateway to other drugs. What a lame excuse. Instead, he promised to, quote, decriminalize use of cannabis and automatically expunge all prior use convictions, both of which would have required new legislation that he never pursued. Biden also promised to, quote, support the legalization of cannabis for medical purposes, leave decisions regarding legalization for recreational use up to the states, and reschedule cannabis as a Schedule II drug so researchers can study its positive and negative effects. Although the rule that the DOJ proposed goes further, making it Schedule III drug, than the last action item, it still does not legalize marijuana for medical purposes, which would require regulatory approval of specific cannabis-based products. Good luck with that one. And while the DOJ under Biden has continued to refrain from targeting states' licensed marijuana business, as it did under Sessions, despite his anti-pot buster, Biden's opposition to legalization precluded resolution of the conflict between state and federal marijuana laws, leaving the recreational cannabis industry with no protection aside from prosecutorial discretion. As vice president, Harris has joined Biden in exaggerating the extent of his drug policy accomplishments. Quote, she said, we changed federal marijuana policy because nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed. That claim was doubly misleading, but she was aiming it at young voters. At that point, Biden had not actually changed federal marijuana policy. After review that Biden ordered, the Department of Human and Health Services had recommended moving marijuana from Schedule I to Schedule III, but the DOJ had not yet accepted the HHS's recommendation, which provoked resistance from the Drug Enforcement Administration. Today, even today, marijuana remains a Schedule I, not a Schedule III. Although Harris, echoing Biden, said nobody should have to go to jail just for smoking weed, it rarely happens. And while Biden has issued a mass pardon for people convicted of simple marijuana possession under federal law in the Code of the District of Columbia, it excluded people convicted of growing or distributing marijuana. So his thing did not free a single prisoner because there wasn't anybody in prison for simple marijuana possession on the federal level. Nor did Biden's pardon decriminalize the use of cannabis, which still, to this day, remains a federal offense punishable by a minimum $1,000 fine and up to a year in jail. Quote, Harris bragged in May that we have pardoned tens of thousands of people with federal convictions for simple marijuana possession. She made this claim at an appearance in South Carolina in February and at a roundtable conversation about marijuana reform the following month. To justify that figure would require motivated math, according to Douglas Berman, a sentencing expert at the Ohio State University's Morent School of Law. The calculation, which could push the numbers of pardon recipients just above 20,000, would hinge on including Washington, D.C. arrests from the mid-1970s on, and assuming that about 15% resulted in convictions, which Berman said, quote, is reasonable for a mid-sized city. But this VP-friendly accounting, he noted, is entirely back of the envelope. He sees it as a big problem in this space. And Harris said she was talking about federal convictions for simple marijuana possession, which would not include charges under the D.C. Code. As she shifts from cheerleaders for the Biden administration to presidential candidate, Harris seems to be taking a bolder stance on drug policy, but that remains to be seen. The vice president has been a strong advocate for ending any cannabis prohibition and restoring and repairing the harm that his president has caused. Morgan Fox, political director for the National Organization of Reform of Marijuana Law, told USA Today, quote, in many ways, she has been a real leader on this issue, particularly as relates to criminal justice reform. So that is a good thing. But here it is, now what you want to hear. Harris's Republican opponent, former President Donald Trump, once supported the legalization of all drugs, saying in 1990 that he hoped that, quote, people will start to realize that this is the only answer. There is no other answer, end quote. That is when President Trump back in 1990, was still in his rational mind. He seems to have lost it. As a Republican presidential candidate 25 years later, Trump claimed he was just suggesting legalization should be studied. He said states should be free to set their own marijuana policies, but he also expressed objections to legalization, saying it is bad and has caused some big problems in Colorado. Not saying what they were, of course. And as president, Trump supported Jeff Sessions, his attorney general, who's had this ostensibly tough stance on state legal marijuana businesses, saying through his press secretary that he believes in enforcing federal law, regardless of what the topic is, whether it's marijuana or immigration. On drug policy more generally, Trump has gone back and forth. As president, he decreed very unfair drug policies, commuted the sentence of nonviolent drug offenders, signed the sentencing reform bill, and criticized Biden's record of pushing draconian drug laws that disproportionately harmed African Americans. He has promised to free Rosa Ulbricht, who is serving a life sentence for running the Silk Road, an online marketplace. If you haven't heard about this online marketplace, put in your search engine Silk Road. Amazing. It'd be something if Trump or this guy ever got pardoned. Anyway, Trump also implausibly insists that a determined effort can stop drugs from entering the country and backs the death penalty for drug pushers. Depending on which version of Trump Harris contends with, she could have an opportunity to take a contrasting drug policy stance that is more compassionate and enlightened. But that might not fit well with her rhetorical strategy of depicting the race as a contest between a criminal and a prosecutor. Those who are inclined toward optimism can find some support in Harris's February 2019 appearance on the syndicated show The Breakfast Club. Have you smoked? Charlemagne the God, the show's host, asked. Harris replied, I have, and I inhaled. That admission was not exactly brave at the time, as another comment got Harris into hot water with her father, Stanford economist Donald Harris. They say you oppose legalizing weed, Charlemagne the God said. That's not true, Harris said. Half of my family is Jamaica. Are you kidding me? End quote. The elder Harris was offended. Quote, he said, quote, speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this travesty, end quote. More impressive than Harris's confession on her lame Jamaica joke was her answer when she was asked whether she might use marijuana again, quote, when it is legalized throughout the country, end quote. Harris replied that it gives a lot of people joy, and we need more joy. And if you noted, she has been talking about this campaign is all about joy and freedom. And I don't think, though, that when she talks about joy with the Democratic Party, that she's talking about cannabis. But there's a connection there. And I can tell you, when Harris wins, there'll be a lot of joy, and people will be enjoying cannabis for that. Well, I am thrilled that we have a caller who's called in to the show, very patiently waiting her turn to come on as I gave you this rundown on where Kamala Harris stands on cannabis, because we really need to know that. And it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Lanny.
Well, thank you for calling in here. It's wonderful. Did you know all about that, about Kamala Harris and her stance on cannabis?
No, I didn't. I actually haven't looked into that, but what is interesting is I was going to talk about Kamala Harris.
Please
and
do.
the whole VP switch, because what I wanted to bring up was how vitriolic everything was when we suggested that perhaps Biden step aside and that another person should be substituted, because I don't watch a lot of TV, to be honest. I'm not glued to MSNBC. I don't watch all the speeches. And so I actually hadn't planned to watch the debate, to be honest. I'm kind of an internet denizen, and I spend a lot of time on Twitter and Blue. Oh, I'm sorry, it's X now. Sorry.
Right.
On X and Blue Sky, and so on TikTok, and so there was a lot of chatter that night of the debate, and I was like, "What is going on over there?" And so I tuned in, and I saw Biden's performance, and I was like, I don't know if you guys curse on your show, so I was like, holy F. I'm like, what happened to Biden? Because he seemed so altered, and he seems so aged, really, since the last time I'd seen him speak. And in fairness,
the word is very, very old. Go ahead.
Well, but see, the thing is, my mom lives with us, and my mom is going to be 88 next month.
Uh-huh.
And my mom doesn't. I mean, I know it's always an individual situation, right?
Right.
My mom doesn't seem like that, So I was just kind of like, wow, and I was kind of shocked, and I was worried, and I didn't even know that, we've never been in a situation like this. I'm 56, so I've seen a few people come and go over time, even Reagan, and we've never seen anything like this. And I was like, oh my God. And so when the possibility was raised that maybe he could step aside, do you remember when Gavin Newsom was going around to all these things and people were saying, oh, he's running a shadow campaign or whatever, and it's like, it's not a bad idea, but that's crazy talk. And all of a sudden it sounded like a better idea, even though I'm not really a fan, but still, so then when the idea came up that maybe this is a time to start thinking about that, because we've got a long ways to go still. And, the whole thing about, oh, he has a cold, and, it's like, no, this isn't a cold.
No, listen.
But what was disturbing about the whole thing, Lanny, was how Democrats turned on Democrats for suggesting that maybe this should be a possibility. How all of a sudden, those of us that said, hey, and it wasn't just the regular people, it was people that had a name, pundits, celebrities that before were revered. Stephen King, everybody loved Stephen King's opinions before, but when he mentioned that perhaps Biden should step aside, suddenly we're traitors. We're stabbing Biden in the back. And I'm like, what happened that we cannot have any kind of discourse about what is, everybody's touting this as the biggest election of our lives, where we certainly can't be emotional about this, that we have to be strategic. And yet, all of a sudden, everybody, I don't remember the Pledge of Allegiance being to a president. It's to our country. And so, but it's, people are suddenly saying that Biden is the best president of their lifetime. And it's like, how do you know that? That's usually something that's spoken of retrospectively in history, right? His policies, anything that he's enacted, Inflation Reduction Act, anything to do with infrastructure, that usually takes time to see how that plays out in history to go, you know what, those policies, we look back like at Roosevelt, right, and see that things that Roosevelt did, what the impact of those policies were in history and what they really meant for people. You can't tell that in 4 years. So, I mean, it was the allegiance that people felt to, some people anyways, felt towards Biden that was like they attacked other people that even thought that maybe we should explore the possibility. They were out to cancel people. And it's like,
I remember,
we're on the same side.
You are so spot on. There was a lot of vitriol that was going out there for people who were, suggesting. And remember when the first representative called for Biden to step aside, the fire and brimstone that rained down on him. But, you're right. You're right on target, Lisa.
Even their darling Adam Schiff. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, the people that they hold so dear, were all of a sudden, I can't believe you would do this to him, But then what kind of makes me laugh, ironically, but not ironically, and I feel like I want an apology now, is so then they picked, the other thing too, they said that it was nothing but rich white men that wanted the change. And it's like, hello, I'm multiracial, thank you. Gee, sorry. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's not just rich white men. But then when Kamala came on the scene and the wave of enthusiasm that came with her, and the sea change of how people were feeling, and all the different people,
Well,
so all of a sudden you had white guys for Harris.
Yeah. Well,
and how all of a sudden they changed it, like they were in on it all along.
Well, yeah, I think what was going on here is that Biden kept saying I had a bad night, and then he did all these things afterwards. You had the press conference, you had the thing with stuff in awfulness and this kind of stuff, and he was not impressive. He was sort of, they were saying, oh, he was better than at the press conference. I mean, than the debate. But that is such a low bar. You couldn't get any worse. It had to be the worst presidential debate ever. And so I think, what you're saying is, and I agree with you 100%. These people that were so much of, denigrating all of us who were saying maybe he should step aside, suddenly began to realize, maybe he should.
Yeah. I mean, because in the end, we tend to treat politics as like a fan club. And it's like our politicians are not celebrities. And, because I'm vice president of my labor union. And one of the things that, politicians come around looking for endorsements. And one of the things I remind my other directors is that, they're asking us for something. I'm not saying that we need to be rude to them, but at the same time, we don't have to trip over ourselves to usher them into the room and, offer them all these things, because it's like they're asking us for a favor. We don't owe them anything. So by that, they and by us, any of the bodies that give endorsements should always remember that too. They are asking for something from us, and none of our bodies owe them that endorsement. So we should give those endorsements carefully. Endorsements should mean that we endorse them. Pledging loyalty to a certain politician is never a good thing, because they work for us. They genuinely work for us, and they need to be able to work for us. And if they can't do it, then we have to consider what the alternative is in order to achieve the goal, because in this case, the goal is to vanquish a genuinely dangerous opponent.
Exactly.
And we have to do it.
And you know, and what's interesting is that you know, eventually, you know, Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, you know, had these meetings with Biden, and Nancy Pelosi was kind of itching. She kept saying he has to decide whether he's going to run or not, when he had made a decision many times. I'm running, you know, only the Lord is going to keep me from running, and so on and so on. But they were, and I think what they did with him is that, you know, he was very concerned with his legacy. I mean, you know, he has accomplished quite a bit as president, some you know, wonderful programs. In fact, you know, he was supported by the Progressive Caucus very much because his policies were truly very progressive, many of them. And so he had this wonderful legacy, and they were pointing out to him, if he ran against Trump and he lost to Trump, Trump would overturn every single policy that he established, and further, he wouldn't be remembered for all the things he did. His legacy would be, he ran against Trump, he lost, and everything that he had created was overturned, and he destroyed not only the Democratic Party, but American democracy. That was a legacy.
Yeah.
I think that's the legacy that finally got him to say, maybe the Lord is speaking to me through Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and I am going to withdraw from the and get behind my vice president, which is, you know, and then there was all this discussion, you know, who should be, you know, the vice, who should be the new candidate, and Kamala Harris did a very good job of getting it together. But before, there was a lot of talk out there that I was not comfortable with about why she shouldn't be the Democratic presidential nominee, and I frankly couldn't think of a better person to do it.
I can't either, but you're right, and I still encounter that in various spaces, that people that think that there's no way that a woman or a black woman can be elected president. But you know where they land most squarely is they still think that just in general that a woman can't be elected president in this country, and it's sad that even women think that. So it's like that shows you how we've been made to feel in general, and it's like, don't let it become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And the Democratic Party has responded to her candidacy. The enthusiasm level is remarkable, and she's turning out. You know, and in this short period of time, I mean, she was able to get all the delegates behind her within a period of days. You know, because remember, Regency said, well, I'll run for the nomination, but she got together and working very quickly. She had all the delegates coming into the convention. They've already nominated her. They had that virtual convention, so they've already nominated her. And the party, you know, they've raised a couple $100 million, just you know, dwarfing what Trump used to brag about. So there's a lot of energy on the part of the party. So there's a lot of people out there that think, you know, we can elect a woman president of the United States.
Well, I'll just end with this. I guess I'm actually hunkered down in the Ralph's parking lot because I had to go in the office. So, you know, heaven help the working girl. But my anticoagulation therapy nurse is a Republican, and she definitely did not want to vote for Trump. She's the old-fashioned fiscal conservative, and she's like, ugh, these MAGA Republicans, when will they go away? But she's going to vote.
If Trump loses, they're going to go away.
Yeah, thank God. But yeah, she's going to vote for Kamala because she's excited at the prospect of finally seeing a woman president. So there's hope out there. There's really hope that, you know, it's going to go the right way, and I don't know. It's a different feeling this time.
Yeah,
it is. It's a different feeling than Hillary.
And I remember after she was, you know, Biden said, vote for, you know, I want Kamala Harris to do it. I saw this thing where she went to the airport and she met this woman, I can't remember who she was, and she had her two young daughters with her, and they're like 7, 8, 9 years old. And she leaned down and she was talking. You can see how excited these little kids were. They were both girls. And I can't help but thinking, women, like you were saying, even women can't think a woman can become president. What do young girls feel? Do you imagine how empowered they're going to be if a woman does become president of the United States?
I know.
It's so important to happen just for the well-being of half the sexual population in this country. They need to see this, especially the children.
Just think if the Barbie movie did something, what this will do. Hey, but you know what? The trick to the Kamala thing is like, the word like comma, like the punctuation, right?
Yeah.
Comma.
Right.
Kamala.
Right.
Kamala. So that's how you do it.
Well, Lisa, I wanted to thank you for calling in. It's been a most interesting chat with you. And I think I've learned a few things listening with you, chatting with you. That's very good. You got a good background. You got a good source of information. You've put together a lot of good stuff. So I appreciate that.
Well, it was fun. I was nervous for a second. Then, of course, once I start talking with you, it's like there's nothing to be nervous about. So.
No. Hey, anybody listening here, don't be nervous. You can call in. If Lisa can do it, you can do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, have a good rest of your night, Lanny, and
you too.
Break a leg, as they say.
Well, no, I don't want to break a leg.
No,
I know what
really,
you know. I know what you're saying. Thank you so much, Lisa. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Bye.
That was Lisa calling in. She wanted to talk about the vitriol that a lot of Democrats heaped on us who wanted Biden to step aside and replace. And I was one of them. And I remember in the early days, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. We were being treated like we were traitors to the cause. And but we were all just terribly. When I saw Biden, Victor and I were sitting there and watching that debate with Biden and Trump. And when I saw him just walking in to the debate, I'm an RN, and I saw him walking in, I said, "Uh-oh, this is not good. He's feeble." You nurses, you're trained to look and recognize when you see a patient. You're trained to kind of analyze what their health is. And right away I thought, oh, he's feeble. And then when he started talking, his delivery was very slow and very quiet and not very forceful. And then that point, about 10 minutes into the debate, when he lost his chain of thought, and I just said, oh, it went. A lot of people I knew said they turned it off. They just couldn't bear it. And I stuck through the whole thing, and it was horrid. And and I just said, right then and there, I says, we can't have. He's got to drop out. He's got to drop out. And so when I started talking about it, and a few other people did, it was not a pretty sight. And I remember when finally a few people in Congress actually had the guts to do it, and then Adam Schiff, who will hopefully be our new U.S. Senator here in California come November, came out calling for him to step aside. That was pretty momentous. And of course, then and then I kept hearing, like, if you remember, Nancy Pelosi kept saying Biden has to make a decision whether he's going to run or not. When he had made, like I pointed out earlier, he had made that decision. But what she was actually saying, think it over and make the decision not to run. So because we cannot take any chances with this. I mean, it's not like the Republicans are running a person who, he may not be a Democrat, but he's not crazy. And Trump is just absolutely delusional. It's just, I can't imagine somebody like that as being president. The guy's delusional. Have you heard about what was that thing? What they was going on with the AI generated images. Let me, if you hadn't heard of it, I'm sure it's been on the news a lot, so I'm sure you've seen it. But let me find the information I had here on that. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. That's not it. Where is it? Oh my! My desk is a mess here. Well, anyway. Well, I can't find it here. It was a great article. Oh, here it is. Here it is. The article was, if you hadn't seen it, and I'm sure you probably have, but it's just, it was about Trump spreading false conspiracy theories about Harris's Detroit event site. Donald Trump falsely claimed in a series of social media posts that, quote, nobody attended Vice President Kamala Harris's Michigan rally last week, and claiming that she should be disqualified over a fake crowd picture. The former president appears to have fallen for a far-right conspiracy theory, and he falls for them all the time, so this is nothing new. And it's easily disproved by photos and videos captured by people who attended there on their own cameras and stuff, showing thousands of supporters at the event at an airport hangar near Detroit. The false claims about attendance at Harris's events come as Trump navigates the contours of this new presidential race. He's not running against Biden, who he was seen as a chump, somebody he could easily defeat, and he probably could have. But now he's in for the run of his life, and he's going to, and so he anything that promotes Harris, he likes. And he apparently, during this last couple of weeks, Harris has been getting all the headlines, all the attention in the newspapers, and he hasn't been getting any, or very, very little. And, he doesn't like that. He wants to be the center of attention. He wants to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and he gets upset when there's nobody in the room to see him. So, anyway, Trump on the through social media made the claim that Harris had been turned in by an airport maintenance worker who noticed the fake crowd picture. So Trump claimed there was this guy that was a maintenance worker at the airport who saw the fake picture, the supposedly fake picture of the crowd there, and said, oh, there was no crowd here. I was working here. Well, that's not true. He just made it up, just like he makes up everything. He then said Harris should be disqualified from the 2024 election because the creation of a fake image is, quote, election interference. Anyone who does that will cheat at anything. Well, that's amazing from a guy who paid a porn star $160,000 because Trump cheated on his wife with her, and he didn't want her. He claims the reason he paid the money to her was because he didn't want his wife, Melania, to know that he cheated on her. And that's why he gave her $160,000. It wasn't because of, he didn't want the public to know about it. It's because he didn't want his wife to know about it. And so he's worried about he's claiming Kamala Harris is cheating with this fake IAD picture. Well, it's fake, and everyone knows it's fake. And I can't believe the MAGA crowd can't believe him. How can anybody possibly believe this fake, this AI-created, generated picture of thousands and thousands of people at this event when there's CNN and NBC and ABC, they all had their cameras there. And they all saw it on the news. They probably even saw it on Fox News that there's crowds of people at this Harris event. So this guy's becoming disillusional. And then his statement about Biden is going to come into this Democratic convention and saying that I want my presidency back and I want to debate Trump and all this kind of stuff. Where is he coming up with this? This guy is just losing it. And, you keep reading about how his aides are telling him, "Oh, don't talk about Harris. Don't make these things. Stick to the issues. Stick to immigration. Stick to inflation. Stick to those kind of things. Don't." But he can't. He can't because I don't think he can think correctly or straight anymore. He's so. Everyone used to talk about Biden being, disoriented and too old. Well, Biden's gone. Trump is 78, not much younger than Biden. Or is he 79 now? I think he's 79 now. And he is as disoriented and more disoriented than Biden. People talk. Did you hear his presentation at the Republican National Convention where he spoke for 90 minutes? It was a litany of his old and biggest lies. This guy lies so much that I believe he doesn't even know he's lying. He really thinks this is true. And if he thinks what these lies that he's telling is true, can we have a president of the United States that cannot tell fact from fiction, reality from dreams or nightmares or whatever? We want a person like that to be in charge of the nuclear code? This is absolutely insane. And all these people that are supporting him, Biden was making all this stuff about, he's a threat to American democracy. Yeah, he's a threat to American democracy. I think he's a threat to the very existence of humanity on this planet. I would be concerned. I would be scared to death if somebody like Trump, who gets so disoriented, listen to one of his speeches. He becomes disoriented during his speeches now. They don't talk about it. They should be. And fabricates all these false stories, and he can't tell the difference between truth. How is he going to make a rational decision if there's some kind of huge crisis that calls, and his answer is, unleash the bombs? And you know what? Who's going to stop him? He's a president of the United States. Is this the kind of thing, the reality that we are willing to accept? A person who is literally deranged. And I know a bag of people say, he's not deranged. Yes, he is deranged. And these kind of things where he's claiming there is AI fake generated images and there was no one at Harris's crowd, we know that's not true. And yet he's saying it is. How can we trust a person like that? And the answer is, of course, we cannot trust a person like that. So, well, I want to thank you for listening to my show. We did have one caller calling in, and I'm very pleased. I hope somebody else will sometimes call in. Last couple weeks ago, we had 3 people call in. So, I do get some email from people. I had 4 emails this week from people who had comments about the show. So thank you all very much for doing that. And by the way, I would like to mention that, as you notice, we don't have any sponsors of our show here. We could use a few sponsors. So if you would like to be a sponsor of our show and get your word out to the listeners of our show, whether it's a product you're selling or an idea you want to push, perhaps you have a book you want to encourage listeners to purchase and read, or perhaps you have a website you want them to visit, become an advertiser on our show. Rates are very, very reasonable. You can call KCA at 909-792-5222 and ask for Mark Westwood. He's the advertising manager here, and he can talk to you all about advertising on the show. Or if you want, you can even talk to me. If you want to talk to me about some topics you would like to see discussed, or you want to talk about being an advertiser or whatever, send me an email. It's a very simple email. It's RN, as in registered nurse, RNLanny, LANNY, at AOL.com, RNLanny at AOL.com. And I will be glad to talk with you about if you have any questions or comments or anything. I would love to hear from you. The one thing I want to mention as we wrap it up is that, I talk quite often about medical marijuana, medical cannabis, and it's very, very important. And I have actually written a book on it. It's called The Cannabis Chronicles. It's comprised of the 120 articles I authored in the 10 years I wrote My Healthy Living for Culture magazine. It covers the multitude of health benefits derived by the use of cannabis as a substitute for just about everything, from alcohol to Zoloft. The Cannabis Chronicle specifically documents the use of marijuana for cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, insomnia, depression, immunity, life extension, neurogenesis, pain mitigation, and lifestyle enhancement, with 6 articles specifically and titillatingly detailing the benefits of cannabis for sex. And believe me, if you don't know about that, read my articles. It really is. And, well, I won't go into that. All my articles are written in an imitable, iconoclastic, and off-the-wall style that I like to write in. The Cannabis Chronicles exposes and explores the use of cannabis by veterans, children, senior citizens, Hollywood stars, Fido and Fluffy, and so many more, as it affirms and validates that this ancient medicinal herb is an intrinsic component for the health and wellness of the individual and the community. You can get this book on Amazon.com or on Kindle.com. When you go in there, you can put it in Cannabis Chronicles, but you can just put in the search box Lanny/cannabis, and it comes up. The book comes up. And you can order it there. You can read it for free there. And I think you'll find it really interesting. Like I said, I wrote 120, and each article is only like 700-800 words. So I call it a bathroom book. You could read it when you're in the bathroom each morning, one chapter, and you can learn all about the medicinal properties of cannabis. And that is, that's one of the reasons I became a nurse, is because I wanted to have some credentials about using cannabis for health issues, because it is so important to the health of the individual. Like I talked about, for cancer and for insomnia and for Parkinson's disease and epilepsy and all this kind of stuff. But as a nurse, the most important reason for using cannabis is as an alternative to alcohol. 80,000 people a year die in this country because of alcohol. Nobody dies of cannabis. And cannabis is the only effective substitute for alcohol. Well, with that, we're going to end the show. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Please tell your friends about Lanny Sense on every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. here on radio station KCAA, the radio station that leaves no listener behind, including those that smoke cannabis.